The horn sounded. It was a sound of warning or ceremony. It was a signal, shrill and final. The hunt had begun. 7 humans bolted through the alien undergrowth, barefoot, breath already ragged with fear. Their feet tore against roots and razor-leaf plants that sliced skin like paper. Panic ruled their movement. They didn't know where they were. They didn't know what was chasing them. But they knew enough, run or die. Above, nestled in trees that weren't quite trees, a group of Varnak hunters watched. Their skin was slick and scaled, like a snake half submerged in oil, and their eyes glowed faintly green under the thick canopy. One of them let out a low growl of amusement as he zoomed in on the humans below. "Look at them scatter," he said, passing the lens of his helmet feed to the next hunter. No coordination, no weapons, not even a strategy, just meat with legs. "Which one do you want?" Another asked, casually adjusting the plasma bolt on his shoulder launcher. "Doesn't matter." They all panicked the same. They watched the humans break apart, each fleeing in a different direction. All except one. The Varnak's amusement flickered. One man stood still. He didn't speak, didn't scream, just crouched beside a fallen log and stared into the trees, his head tilted slightly, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. "What's wrong with that one?" a hunter asked. "Broken," came the reply. "Too scared to run." "Leave him. I want the red-haired female. Fast ones are more fun." The group of hunters vanished into the trees. Weapons charged, their movement swift and silent. Predators by birth, killers by choice. But Dane Cross didn't move. Not for several minutes. He crouched, scanned the underbrush, and then slowly slid backward, deeper into the shade. The others were already doomed. He knew that. Running was a death sentence. This wasn't terrain meant for escape. It was a box, a preserve, designed to crush panic into bloodstains. So he didn't run. He remembered the maps carved into shuttle walls during the transport. He remembered the terrain cycles. He remembered everything. By the time the screams echoed faintly through the jungle, he was already gone. Elsewhere, a Varnak named Isk braced his weapon against his shoulder, scanning the forest below as his HUD highlighted heat signatures. He was grinning. 2 kills already. The male had cried, the female had begged. Predictable, disappointing. But he wasn't worried. There were more to chase, and the camera drones were feeding well. His viewer count had spiked into the millions. Hunting humans had become the galaxy's hottest thrill. No claws, no venom, just raw emotion. Their fear sold subscriptions. He tapped his comm. 2 down. I'm heading east. Anyone got eyes on the big one? The still one. Static answered him. He frowned and adjusted his feed. Still nothing. Brel? Silence. He blinked, then laughed at himself. Probably busy ripping someone in half. But the laugh didn't stick. In a nearby clearing, Dane was crouched again, studying footprints. Alien, 3-toed, spaced tightly, indicating cautious movement. Dane checked his surroundings. Fingers trailing against a curved blade he crafted from a broken jawbone. He wasn't delusional. He knew his odds. But his mind wasn't on survival anymore. It was on calculation. The Varnak were hunters, yes, but spoiled ones. They expected patterns. They expected prey. They didn't expect someone who'd spent 10 years in human special recon units, whose entire purpose had been to disappear into hostile terrain and bleed ghosts. He moved again, low and quick. The foliage swallowed him. An hour passed. Isk still hadn't found another heat trace. He grunted and turned his attention to the comms. He finally pinged Brel's coordinates and followed the trail. The path grew quiet. Too quiet. He noticed the silence, but it didn't alarm him. He was armed, and these were humans. No claws, no scales. Nothing they could do. He tripped, just slightly. His boot snagged on something. He looked down. A line of native fiber, almost invisible, stretched taut across the moss floor. His eyes widened too late. A spike launched upward into his side with shocking force. He staggered backward, trying to scream, but the next hit came from above. A weighted rock wrapped in vines smashed his helmet. The HUD shattered. He fired blindly, plasma bolts lighting up the darkness, but nothing hit. Then came the hand. Human, covered in mud and sweat, it grabbed his shoulder and yanked. Dane didn't waste energy. The plasma dagger he'd scavenged from an earlier kill ignited silently and slid through the alien's throat with brutal efficiency. The Varnak twitched once, dropped his weapon, and fell. Dane caught the body, lowered it to the ground, and exhaled slowly. One down. He took the alien's shoulder pack and ammo belt, inspecting them with a cold, methodical eye. Nothing too advanced. Their tech relied on dominance, not defense. No biometric locks. No contingency for loss. That was arrogance. He kept the blade and discarded the rifle. It was too loud. By morning, the hunters were missing 3 of their team. The others regrouped. "Something's wrong," one of them muttered, eyes scanning the forest. "You think," another snapped. 3 of US dead. 3. By a human. What kind of training did this one have? The commander barked a command. "We end this now. Circle sweep. Flommers if you have to. Burn the woods." But fire didn't reach Dane. He'd moved again, already predicting their pattern. By the time the fire began, he was watching from a ridge, motionless, face streaked with blood and ash. He didn't smile. There was nothing satisfying about killing. This was a revenge. This was correction. They wanted a hunt. He gave them one. But it wouldn't go how they planned. And it wasn't over yet. The body had been hanging from a tree for exactly 6 minutes. Upside down, blood drained neatly into a hollowed shell below. Part warning, part bait. The Varnak patrol spotted it from a distance, slowed and froze. One of them hissed. The others checked their motion trackers, but there was no movement, just silence. No wind, no birds, no prey running blindly through the brush. "This is psychological warfare," one of them muttered. "He's human," another replied. "They're not smart enough for that. Apparently this one is." They didn't move closer, didn't touch the body. They'd seen what happened to another hunter who tried. His head had exploded on contact, tripwire with the dead's own plasma cell. Turned into a proximity mine. Ingenious. Savage. One of them tried to ping HQ again. Static. No response. Their signal had been cleaned yesterday, but now it was buried in digital haze. Down in the brush, Dane moved like water. Fluid. Quiet. He had smeared more of the local mud across his chest and arms, cooling and masking heat. He used moss's insulation and broken leaves to distort his scent. A crude method, but it worked. The Varnak had thermal vision, but no imagination. They couldn't see what they didn't expect. And they didn't expect him. He studied the 3 aliens from a slope above. Their positioning was decent, shoulders aligned, watching each other's flanks. But they were still predators of comfort, of showmanship. They didn't fight like people who had ever needed to fight. Dane's eyes locked onto the weakest link, the one holding a sonic tracker too tightly. Fingers twitching. Nervous. Good. He moved like a whisper. Down the slope, through roots and shadows. 30 seconds later, he was 10 feet away, still unseen. The plasma dagger in his grip was warm. He waited. A sound burst from the other side of the tree line. A recorded human scream, distorted and looping. The Varnak snapped their heads toward it, aiming weapons. Dane struck. A clean jab to the base of the neck. The alien seized up. Dane caught the body before it hit the ground, pulled it silently backward into the underbrush. Gone. 2 left. They hadn't noticed. He slipped sideways in a half circle, kicked a rock downhill. Another noise. The aliens turned again, deeper into the trap. He could have killed them both right then, but he wanted fear, not for cruelty, for time. If they feared him, they'd hesitate. If they hesitated, they'd talk. If they talked, they'd give him away off this moon. And he intended to leave, alive, a minute later. One of the hunters knelt to inspect the blood pool under the hanging corpse. He noted that the smell was wrong, too clean, too staged. He looked up, his jaw barely open before a sharpened branch slammed through his eye socket. The last alien panicked. He fired in all directions, spinning, screaming in Varnak, his voice high-pitched and breaking. Dane didn't attack. He waited, Let the alien use up his ammo. Burn through his nerves. He followed from the treetops, silent. By nightfall, the alien was curled under a fallen log, weapons shaking in his hands, eyes scanning every leaf and shadow. His comm blinked red. Still no signal. Then the voice came. "Human, calm. You're not hunters. You're tourists with guns." The alien's head jerked up. "Come out," he shouted. "Face me, coward." Dane's voice again, closer now. "You hunt for sport. I hunt because I have to. That's the difference." The alien fired blindly into the trees. Nothing. Then movement behind. He turned, too slow. Dane dropped from the tree, tackled him to ground, and drove the plasma dagger down through his chest. One clean strike. Quick, efficient. As the alien gurgled his final breath, Dane leaned close. "How many ships orbit this place?" he whispered. "How do I get out?" The dying hunter didn't answer. His eyes faded. Dane let the body drop and stripped the comms unit from his armor. He walked deeper into the jungle, fingers tapping against the stolen device. It wouldn't be easy. It wasn't supposed to be, but he'd done more with less before. He found a ravine a mile out and set up camp inside an ancient tree trunk. The alien pack held 3 protein cubes and a purification straw, enough to last another day. That night, as rain pelted the canopy above, he sat in silence, eating slowly, the dagger beside him and his thoughts spinning like blades. They thought humans were prey, because they only ever met the ones who ran. He didn't run, and he wasn't done. The next morning, he triggered the stolen comm manually. Shortwave burst, frequency scan, loop pattern. No response. Then a flicker of static. Faint, but real. He repeated the scan, narrowed the band. A voice answered, garbled, alien, but clear. Dane smiled for the first time. Someone was listening. Elsewhere, panic spread to the Hunter base station in orbit. 8 hunters dead. No body recoveries. No sign of the human, except from the drone footage, which had gone viral across 3 systems. The Varnak warlord assigned to the operation slammed his claws into the holodeble. Who is this man? No one had an answer. All there was grainy footage of Shadow moving through the trees, dripping in alien blood, eyes burning like coals. And the number of subscribers to the Hunt stream kept climbing. It wasn't a game anymore. It was a reckoning. They called him the Ghost. Not officially, not in reports, but in the dark corners of the interstellar net where the Hunt streams were dissected, memed, and turned into betting pools, the name stuck. The human who wouldn't die. The one who killed with silence. The one who turned a Varnak hunt into a massacre. Dane Cross didn't know or care what they called him. He was too busy listening. The alien comms unit buzzed at irregular intervals. He had learned its timing, understood enough of the interface to loop static into a blank reply. He didn't want them to know he was listening. Not yet. He'd picked up pieces. Ship designations, names of orbiting vessels, security codes. Enough to guess there were at least 2 orbiters parked in low atmosphere, cloaked but lightly armed. And they didn't want to abort the hunt. Too much money. Too much pride. Too late. Dane moved at night now, avoiding the open. He rarely slept, surviving on ration cubes and filtered rain. He had turned the forest into an extension of himself. Traps that moved, paths that vanished, signals that lured and killed. His mind operated in pure logic. Locate, assess, eliminate, learn. The instincts drilled into him during Earth's Black Ops years had reawakened in full. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was war, one that the galaxy had never seen. He took another patrol by disabling their sensor grid. When they split up to recalibrate, he waited until the final one, a younger Varnak, clearly inexperienced, passed under a broken canopy. Dane dropped silently behind him, wrapped one arm around the alien's throat, and dragged him backward into the roots. This time, he didn't kill immediately. He wanted information. Speak. The alien thrashed, but went still when Dane pressed the plasma blade under his jaw. How many left on the ground? No answer. Dane applied pressure. The blade hissed. The alien croaked. For active plus the handler. Dane's eyes narrowed. Handler? He hadn't encountered one yet. Where? East Quadrant. Cliffside base. Temporary. Watching everything. That was new. He cut the alien's throat clean and quiet, then stood over the corpse, thinking. A handler meant someone was monitoring the hunt from ground level, probably overseeing the stream, issuing directives, maybe even coordinating recoveries. And if that handler was transmitting from the cliff base, then Dane had a way in, not just to kill, to broadcast. He moved again, traversing terrain he hadn't crossed before. The eastern cliffs were treacherous, sharp, uneven rocks, thick with alien mold that burned skin, but he moved through it like it owed him passage. His body was covered in cuts, bruises, heat rash, but his mind was clear. Purpose was a better stimulant than food. He reached the cliffside just before dusk and saw the structure, a hexagonal outpost, partially buried in the rock, camouflaged. A single antenna pulsed weakly, and 2 Varnak guards patrolled the entrance. Dane didn't waste time. He rigged a trap at the outpost's left ridge, lured the first guard with a decoy motion ping, and eliminated him with a weighted stone to the skull. The second reacted too slowly. He was tackled and disarmed before he could even draw. The handler inside was older, bulkier, adorned in red battle leather. He was mid-transmission when Dane burst through the hatch. The alien raised a weapon. Dane shot him once through the gut, using the guard's stolen sidearm. Then silence. Dane didn't finish him off. He stepped over the bleeding handler and went straight to the control panel. His hands moved fast. Alien symbols, but the logic was universal. Stream connection, broadcast options, frequency override. He punched in the code he'd heard over the comms 2 days earlier. The screen blinked. Live. A drone camera clicked to life beside him. Red light blinking. He stared into it. No helmet. No mask, just his mud-covered face, bruised, bloodied, eyes burning with a clarity that cut through the static. He didn't shout. He spoke. You turned humans into a game. The handler moaned behind him, crawling for a weapon. Dane kicked it away without looking. You made our fear your entertainment, our deaths your ratings. He leaned closer. But you didn't understand what you invited. You wanted to see what happens when you hunt us. A pause. Now you know. He ended the transmission. No flare, no final speech. He turned off the console, smashed the uplink node, and lit the base's reactor core with a plasma leak. Then he walked out. 10 minutes later, the entire cliffside detonated in a brilliant blue burst. On every hunt network across the galaxy, the stream cut to static, then replayed the footage of Dane's face, over and over. By the next cycle, multiple species had filed complaints. Some governments called for investigations into Varnak hunting ethics. Others began quietly researching human physiology, behavior patterns, combat doctrines. What they found disturbed them. Unpredictable biology, high pain tolerance, emotional volatility, illogical decision-making under stress. But somehow, this made them more dangerous, not less. And now, one human had wiped out an entire hunter squad using nothing but salvage, terrain, and patience. Back on the moon, Dane watched the detonation from a hilltop. It was beautiful, but more importantly, it sent a message. He wasn't just surviving, he was winning. And somewhere up there, in one of those orbiting ships, someone was very, very afraid. The last Varnak hunter ran. He didn't move with pride or purpose. He wasn't tracking anything. He wasn't even checking his HUD. He was sprinting, crashing through the forest in a full-blown panic. His shoulder was bleeding from a makeshift arrow. His breathing was erratic. His plasma rifle was gone. And worst of all, he didn't know where the human was. Dane watched him from 30 feet up, crouched in the crook of a tree that bent slightly with his weight. The final hunt wasn't about rage anymore. It wasn't about revenge. It was about message control. One survivor would speak louder than 100 corpses. He let the Varnak stumble into a clearing, just outside the crater where the cliffside base had once stood. Smoke still rose from the collapsed ridge. Charred metal, burnt corpses, and melted panels were all that remained. The hunter collapsed to his knees beside it. muttering something over his comms. It wouldn't matter. Dane dropped behind him, slow and deliberate. No ambush this time. No dagger. Just presence. The Varnak flinched and turned slowly, mouth trembling. "Go," Dane said. The alien blinked. I said go. It hesitated, unsure. You're letting me live?" Dane said nothing. The hunter nodded furiously, stood, and ran, limping, not looking back. It would reach a rescue party eventually. Dane had made sure of it. He jammed the uplinks only partially. Just enough time to make sure the message had sunk in. That one hunter would talk, would scream, maybe, would describe a forest full of traps and shadows, and a human that didn't fight like prey, and the galaxy would listen. Dane turned away from the smoking crater and made his way through the ash-covered path to the rendezvous zone, one of several locations he'd heard mentioned over the comms before the base went down. If the rescue protocol followed typical Varnak procedure, a sweep drone would arrive once all signals had gone dark. And they were dark now. All of them. He reached the site by nightfall. A low valley with flat terrain, too symmetrical to be natural. A launch pad buried under brush. He knelt and activated the stolen comm panel. He'd modified it over the last day, looped the beacon frequency into the emergency code. A single word blinked on the crack screen. Transport inbound. The ship arrived an hour later. Sleek, unmanned, a drone shuttle designed for a fast retrieval. It descended quietly, sensors scanning for survivors. The hatch hissed open. Dane didn't hesitate. He stepped in. As the hatch closed behind him and the shuttle lifted from the cursed moon, he allowed himself to sit for the first time in 3 days. His body throbbed, nerves raw, skin torn from vines, burns, and alien acid. But his mind remained razor sharp. The stars appeared in the viewport. Then the surface vanished beneath clouds. And just like that, he was gone. But the story didn't end there. A week later, on the central commnet of the Outer Spiral, a news burst trended across 17 systems. Varnak Hunt Moon decommissioned. Galactic inquiry launched into human combat ethics. Clips of Dane's face circulated. His message repeated on loop, now translated into 6 major languages. Some audiences called him a war criminal. Others called him a hero. And some, those paying attention, called him a sign of something far worse. A ripple, because for centuries, humans have been treated like a curiosity. A backwater species, barely spacefaring, biologically erratic, emotionally unstable. A species observed, exploited, and underestimated. Until one man flipped the rules of the galaxy's bloodsport. Not with technology, not with numbers, but with will. Somewhere deep within a secure Varnak fleet, High Command reviewed the drone footage frame by frame. They slowed the audio, dissected his voice, mapped his tactics. Not for prosecution, for fear. Because if one human could do that, what would happen if more arrived? What if this wasn't an outlier? What if Earth had trained him? In the darkness of the war chamber, one Varnak officer whispered, "We hunted them, and they learned." Silence followed. Then a voice, "No, they always knew. We just never gave them a reason." Meanwhile, the shuttle that carried Dane touched down on a neutral station near the edge of Terran space. It didn't signal. It didn't broadcast. It just landed, opened its hatch, and let him out. No fanfare. No medals, just a quiet hum of recycled air and the cold steel of the docking bay beneath his feet. He walked until he reached the outbound corridor. A human attendant blinked at the blood on his shirt, at the dried mud and torn skin. "Can I help you, sir?" Dane looked at her with tired eyes. "Yeah," he said. "I want a ride home." And behind him, a cross system still reeling from his broadcast, a quiet shift had begun. Recruitment numbers for Terran defense spiked. New alliances hesitated before enacting aggression. Entire species paused their war games. Because someone had to ask, what if there were more like him? And what happens when they stop hunting and start organizing?